Hello dear students, this is a video that deals with a very interesting topic, the topic that we hear about in recent times. The topic is muscle memory, and therefore it will be the topic which is interesting for generally for everybody. But let me say at the outset that I will be dealing with it on a general level first, and then we will be discussing the physiology behind it. So, the thrust will be on the circuits involved in the muscle memory and the physiology that is related with it. Right. Now, first thing is, let's clear out a misunderstanding. The muscle memory, the term, the phrase itself makes one believe that the muscle itself has some kind of a circuit, and therefore the muscle is able to perform the tasks in an automatic fashion. Well, that's not the case. Therefore, we can call it as a misnomer in that sense. Muscle itself does not have some kind of a memory. It's the CNS which has the memory related to the muscle tasks. So, let that be clear at the beginning. And therefore, now with that in mind, let's see some of the aspects related to this topic called muscle memory and the physiology involved in it. It's a form of procedural memory that involves consolidating a specific motor task into the memory by repetition. So, that's how it is defined really. We are able to perform certain tasks very automatically, and by automatically I mean no cortical attention is needed. Take the daily tasks of driving a vehicle or riding a bicycle or swimming or any such tasks. These motor actions or motor tasks are performed quite automatically without needing the attention by the cortex. So, it is said that there is a certain kind of muscle memory, and therefore we are able to perform those tasks very easily without even thinking about it. So, that is basically the muscle memory topic all about. And therefore, as I said, it's not as if muscle has some kind of a long-term memory or something. Muscle does not have the circuits. The circuits are very much in the CNS related to the tasks performed by the muscles. Right, and therefore we are going to look at those circuits as well. When a movement is repeated over time, a long-term muscle memory is created for that particular task, and eventually allowing it to be performed with little or no effort. You would not need any effort whatsoever to think and perform that task. It will be very fluently performed without having any thought process involved. So, that basically is the basis for muscle memory. Now, many tasks are performed automatically like this without needing cortical attention, as I mentioned. Basically, this muscle memory will involve two steps. First step would be a short-term process, short-term stage. It will involve encoding of that motor task. When we start learning a particular task, slowly over a period of time, that motor task will get encoded in our CNS circuits, and then it will be consolidated in the long-term memory. It will be consolidated on a long-term basis. So, these are the two stages involved. Let me tell you, even in the case of general memory, development of long-term memory, first there is working memory that gets developed in the cortex. In the motor cortex, there will be development of a working memory. So, that will be the first step this will get converted into long-term memory in hippocampus. I'm talking about general memory at this stage. I'm not talking about muscle memory per se. First, the working memory in the motor cortex, and then it gets converted into long-term memory in the region called hippocampus. It's a part of the limbic system, and particularly certain areas of hippocampus have been designated for it. For example, CA1 region of hippocampus and other such regions, I beg your pardon. And then again, once it has been converted into a long-term memory, then it will be consolidated in the neocortex. It will be consolidated in the premotor cortex or neocortex. So, working memory formed, it got encoded into a long-term memory in the hippocampus, and then the second step that involves is the consolidation of that memory in the premotor cortex. So that's how it works in the case of development of long-term memory. Now coming back to our topic at hand, that's muscle memory. As I said, even here a short-term stage that involves encoding a particular motor task in the CNS circuits and then consolidating it. And once it got consolidated, then the tasks will be performed effortlessly, fluently, without any cortical attention needed. Right. So memory encoding stage may be referred to as the motor learning. I mean, that is when we are learning to perform that particular motor skill. It could be anything, as I mentioned, riding a bicycle or driving a vehicle and so on. Now, or even complex motor skills, we learn to play certain sports, the table tennis or any such sports. So we are learning, and this stage involves the conscious areas of the brain. Well, since it is getting encoded in the motor cortex, naturally conscious area, motor cortex obviously is the conscious area of the brain. So the somatosensory cortex and the motor cortex, these two areas are involved at this stage because the skill is being learned consciously, right? Now I'm not talking about the long-term memory which I had drawn the circuit some time back. Now we are talking about the muscle memory particularly. This will involve some other areas of the brain as I mentioned just now. Okay, the skill is being learnt consciously. So conscious areas involved, somatosensory cortex and the motor cortex. Well, cerebellum is also involved in the motor learning. So the point that I am now going to establish is in the development of muscle memory, three areas will be involved essentially: the cortex, motor cortex particularly, the cerebellum and the basal ganglia. So these three form a kind of a triage, and it is here in the circuits of these three that there will be the muscle memory which will be encoded on a long-term basis. So cerebellum is involved. The most accepted model for cerebellar learning is in the form of neuroplasticity. You know, muscle memory development will involve obviously the neuroplasticity by long-term depression. Long-term depression is the most accepted model for cerebellar learning, and it's the long-term depression of the parallel fiber synapses onto the Purkinje cells. Let's quickly have a look at this. In the cerebellum, there is a cell, the granule cell. The granule cell in the cerebellum sends short axons. So here is a granule cell in the cerebellum. It sends short axons which run up to the surface and make a T shape. Now these are called as the parallel fibers. they run parallel to the surface. These are parallel fibers, and then these fibers are going to synapse with the important cell, the Purkinje cell in the cerebellum. So here is the Purkinje cell of the cerebellum, and then if you have learned cerebellum to some extent, you will already know that the Purkinje cell is going to exert an inhibitory influence on the deep nuclear cell. Deep nuclear cell of the cerebellum is going to send the outputs from the cerebellum. So here is a deep nuclear cell which is under the inhibitory influence of the Purkinje cell, and you know all the outputs that are going finally to the muscles, they are sent out via the deep nuclei. This is the deeper mass of the cerebellum where these nuclei are located. So this is the basic circuit involved in the cerebellar learning, and as I mentioned just now, the long-term depression by the granule cell via parallel fibers on the Purkinje cell is the most accepted model. I am going to discuss cerebellum in detail, maybe in 2 or 3 parts later on in the other videos. So for now, you can just take this much as the most accepted model for learning the complex motor skills. So it is here that this muscle memory is getting established. That's one part of development of the muscle memory. Now, basal ganglia are also involved. Basal ganglia involved in the learning and memory of the motor skills. I said basal ganglia are, or basal ganglia is, whatever suits your grammar, because basal ganglia is plural, but basal ganglia is considered as one unit made of 5 collections of nerve cells. So that was just besides the topic, of course. Well, the general rule is when a motor task is being performed repetitively, when we perform this task repetitively while we are learning it and even after learning that task, how is it that the proficiency to perform that task goes on increasing? Yes, as we repetitively perform that particular task, the proficiency to perform that task goes on increasing. How is that? And therefore, in physiology, there is a rule called as Hebb's rule, and it says synaptic connectivity changes as a function of repetitive firing. The synaptic connectivity in the CNS will go on changing, and we are calling it as neuroplasticity. There will be change in that connectivity, and the synaptic strength also will go on changing as a function of repetitive firing. So as we perform it repetitively, it becomes more and more proficient, and therefore that motor task also can be performed easily and more proficiently. So there is a synaptogenesis. Yes, the most important part is there will be synaptogenesis during learning. When we are learning, then the new synapses are getting developed. When we are performing, or rather we are learning to perform that particular motor task, new synapses are developing. And then as we perform that task repetitively, there would be strengthening of these synapses. So their function will improve. Synaptic function will improve, and therefore complex motor skills will get consolidated eventually in the premotor cortex, as I mentioned already. But that's how the things happen. So let me just summarize it once again. I am going to go one step further and we will describe it further, but just at this stage let me summarize that this kind of muscle memory, it happens in 2 stages. First, a particular task will be encoded. It's a short-term stage. and then and as I said, there will be new synapse which is being developed as you are working that performing that particular task, and then the synapses will get consolidated. The memory of that particular motor skill will get consolidated in the CNS circuits. We are now going to describe those CNS circuits. So let's see the organization of the motor system to understand where exactly this consolidation is going to happen. I have already mentioned that there are three areas involved in the development of this muscle memory. And what are those? The cortex, cerebellum, basal ganglia. So muscle memory is not actually present in the muscle itself, as the name suggests. It's present in this these three parts of the CNS, the cortex, cerebellum, basal ganglia, and therefore let's see how they interact with each other and how this memory gets established. Before we actually start that organization of the motor system, let me just quickly revise it. If you look at the brain, the lateral view of the brain, there is a central sulcus near the middle region, and in front of it, in front of the central sulcus, in the frontal lobe, there is motor cortex. I know it's basic, but let's just revise it. Now, behind the central sulcus, parietal lobe, there is sensory cortex or somatosensory cortex. I have mentioned these terms already. So, and then the temporal lobe, auditory cortex, and most posteriorly the occipital lobe, visual cortex. We are not concerned with those right now as of this moment. We will be looking or concentrating more on the parietal lobe and frontal lobe, somatosensory cortex and the motor cortex. Right. So, behind this central sulcus, the somatosensory cortex, areas 3, 1, 2, primary sensory cortex, or it's called as S1, and areas 5 and 7 are the S2, sensory association areas or secondary sensory cortex. So, the perception of sensations will reach this part of the brain, these areas. As we are learning the motor skill, there will be perception of sensations. So, it's reaching these areas. Well, as we are performing those movements, the signals are also sent into the cerebellum. In fact, mainly the signals are sent into the cerebellum, because now we are looking at the muscle memory, we are looking at the subconscious level, no cortical attention. We will come to that in a moment. Let's just finish this. Frontal lobe has motor cortex. So, area 4 is the primary motor cortex, and area 6 is the premotor and supplementary motor areas. We are interested in these areas, or these areas will be functional in the first stage. Remember what I said, first stage involves cortical attention, because we are learning the skill and it's reaching the cortex. So, these areas will be heavily involved in the first stage. And then, just to finish it, in the motor cortex, the body representation is contralateral. Right half of the body is represented in the left motor cortex, and vice versa. It is roughly inverted, and some body parts get disproportionate representation in the motor cortex. Which are those body parts? For instance, thumb and muscles of speech. These areas get maximum representation, disproportionate representation in fact, because thumb involves maybe thumb has only occupying 1% area in the body, but in the motor cortex it almost occupies thumb controlling area occupies 15 to 20%. So, more the skillful movement being performed, larger will be the representation in the motor cortex. Therefore, that's the cortex involved in the initial parts when we are learning that motor skill. Now, as we are performing the movement, how the signaling happens? Let's try to understand that. How the motor system is organized, how it sends signals in various regions, which circuits are involved. So, the first thing is, when a person thinks of performing a voluntary movement, first impulse will arise from the premotor and supplementary motor areas, area 6. Already during the process of learning, the circuits in that region have been established, that this particular task encoded in this particular circuit in the cortex, in the premotor cortex. So, first impulse will arise in the premotor and supplementary motor areas. Now, this signal will be sent to the basal ganglia. As I mentioned, basal ganglia is not a one homogeneous part in the brain. 5 discrete collections of nerve cells collectively called as the basal ganglia. So, once the thought arises, it will be sent into the basal ganglia, where that movement which we have now learned already, the circuits related to that movement are also located in the basal ganglia, and therefore, what contribution is made by the basal ganglia is that it converts abstract thought into a voluntary movement. It converts the abstract thought into a voluntary movement. Then it selects the desired movement. This is going to have quite a spontaneity, because now the movement has been consolidated. I mean, the circuit has been established for it already. We have learned that movement, and therefore now that movement has to occur at a subconscious level without involvement of the cortex, without needing the cortical attention. So, those circuits will be passed on to the basal ganglia and to the cerebellum. No cortical attention needed after learning the task. So, selects the desired movement. Basal ganglia will select the desired movement. For instance, it could be anything. While playing table tennis, for instance, there are n number of movements possible for each move, for each time that the person is going to strike the ball, but then selects the most desired movement, and that too very spontaneously. Spontaneity is provided by the basal ganglia. Purpose to the movement is provided by the basal ganglia. Proportion to the movement is provided by the basal ganglia. So, all these contributions are made by the basal ganglia and the circuits in the basal ganglia related to that particular motor task. Well, then next, the third impulse goes into the cerebellum. Cerebellum has 3 functional divisions, out of which one is called as neocerebellum or corticocerebellum. So, the impulse will go to the corticocerebellum, and as you can see, there are to and fro arrows. That means it's a to and fro connection. So, impulse goes into the cerebellum, next neocerebellum, and then neocerebellum gives the sequencing of muscle contractions. Sequencing. All this was already encoded in the cortex, and cortex had already got connected with the basal ganglia and cerebellum. So, the circuits for that muscle memory have already been established. Now it has to be just put into effect, but without the attention of the cortex. So cerebellum and basal ganglia will take over in a major way. Sequence of muscle contractions, it will help in the planning and programming of the movement, which was actually basal ganglia and cortical circuits together. Okay, and once that has happened, then the fourth impulse goes to the primary motor cortex, area 4, where sequential commands will be formed for the concerned muscles. What I am trying to say is cortical attention not needed. Why? Because now the major contributions are coming from basal ganglia and cerebellum, right? Because well, cortex will have to play a role at some stage, because it can't be a completely subconscious type of movement or completely no attention type of movement, but very little attention, we can say. I mean, for example, we are driving. Now driving is that motor task which we said involves the muscle memory, and therefore we just keep on driving, keep on making those movements at a subconscious level. But as we see the signal and we see those red and green lights, then we have to decide, and that decision has to be taken somewhere at the conscious level. So some amount of cortical involvement will be there, and then once it has been decided, once the movement has been decided, each particular movement or each particular part of the movement, then it is sent down for execution. There are two types of fibers that descend from the cortex after having consulted these two. Cerebellum and basal ganglia are already taken into the loop, and then fibers descend down. First set of fibers from the cortex directly going on to the spinal cord in the form of corticospinal tract. This is for initiation of the movement. So movement has been initiated in a conscious manner by the corticospinal tract, cortex to spinal cord to the muscle. And well, the other set of fibers which I have shown here, from the cortex to brainstem and from brainstem to spinal cord. These fibers will be mainly involved in the postural support that is needed to perform that particular movement. It will involve vestibulospinal tracts, reticulospinal tracts. So they are starting from the brainstem and going to spinal cord, and they are providing mainly the postural support, right? So once the movement is initiated, now it is going to completely happen at a subconscious level. How? Look, the movement started. Here is the muscle group involved in that movement. Now this muscle, as it begins the movement, as it begins the contractions, the signal will arise from the proprioceptors in the muscle. The signals will go back to the spinal cord, and from there the signals will be sent into the cerebellum. Now the signals are not going to the somatosensory cortex as a conscious proprioception, but the signals from the muscle to spinal cord, the muscle has begun contracting, okay. So contracting muscle sending signal back to spinal cord, from the spinal cord the signals are going into the cerebellum. This tract is called as spinocerebellar tract. Spinocerebellar tract. It's going to carry the unconscious proprioception. So now it has started happening at an unconscious or a subconscious level. Unconscious proprioception. So cerebellum already knows what is the desire of the cortex, because the first stage circuits were encoded in the cortex related to that particular motor task, and now it is going to be performed at a subconscious level without cortical attention. So cerebellum directly is now receiving the muscle impulses. It will send the signals back to the spinal cord, and from there back to those muscles and then keep on adjusting those muscle contractions. So at this stage you can see that the movements can happen very effortlessly, without cortical attention, and in a very proficient manner. So that is basically how the movements are performed, particularly those complex skills which are performed at a subconscious level without the cortical attention. Therefore, the point that I am trying to make is that cortex will initiate the movement. After that, the cerebellum and cerebellum takes over. Basal ganglia are also involved because basal ganglia are going to provide that spontaneity and proportion to the movement that is needed at a subconscious level. That is basically the circuitry involved in the muscle memory. So muscle memory is not located in the muscle as the name suggests. It could be, we can call it as a misnomer. Muscle memory is basically a triage of cortex, cerebellum, basal ganglia, and more contribution comes from the cerebellum, and then the basal ganglia, and least contribution will come from the cortex. Cortex had already developed the circuit in the first stage. So that is in a nutshell about the muscle memory and organization of the motor system to perform the voluntary movements. Well, let me just complete it. The role of cerebellum. As I said, in the first stage, sequencing of the muscle contractions will be provided by the cerebellum. And after that, once the movement starts at a subconscious level, as the proprioceptive impulses come back to the cerebellum, it compares this with the circuits of the cortex, where the motor skill was already stored in the first stage, and then accordingly it will send the signals back to those muscles and keep on playing further and further, keep on causing muscle contractions further and further. So smoothening of the movement, then coordination between muscle groups to perform the movement in a very smooth, well coordinated manner, stopping exactly at the target but at a subconscious level. These are all the functions contributed by the cerebellum in the muscle memory. So that was a short topic